All right, everyone, now it's time to talk about an interesting phenomenon that we're seeing right now. The Democrats have done a 180. They've come full circle from complaining about some of the excesses in the wake of 9/11 of Bush's war on terror. His war on common sense, basically, and his war on the Constitution. Now they're basically doing the same thing. When they talk about there's a war on democracy, what are they fundamentally doing? You should be afraid. There's a very highly malleable enemy that's constantly in flux that we can't really define, sort of like Islamic terrorism. They can look just like you. Oh, no, actually, it's like Al-Qaeda and stuff. We got to fight them over there so we don't have to fight them over here, but they're over here anyway, and by the way, these groups fight each other, and it's all a bunch of hogwash. By the way, let me look at your body in the airport scanner. And you should take your shoes off. And I need to read your library records and look through your browsing history and shit because, America, basically. The Democrats are now doing the same thing. Right now, they've pledged themselves to passing a whole slew of draconian new laws. For instance, Klobuchar keeps bleeding constantly. She spent over a year rambling about disinfo. The tech firms need to do more. We need to sponsor legislation to make sure that more Russians don't destroy our democracy. In order to protect our democracy, technically democratic republic, based on the notion of privacy, free expression, free speech, the ability to defend oneself, the right to a fair trial, states' rights, we need to destroy all of these things. Well, this state isn't playing the game that we want them to play. Fuck the 10th Amendment. Well, this group of people scares us. Fuck the Second Amendment. This group of people is saying things that we define as being Russian propaganda. Fuck the First Amendment. This group of people is bad wrong. They went to the Capitol on January 6th. Fuck their right to a speedy, fair trial. And by the way, we need to monitor people more for chatter about the Proud Boys or whatever, so fuck the Fourth Amendment too. Isn't this exactly what W did? Of course it is. You should be afraid, and so let me abuse you. We've got to defend our country, so we're going to ruin the underpinnings of our country. We did this with the war on terror for years and years. It's effectively, and most often the courts didn't side with him, which was good, George W. and his cronyists, they expanded rapidly government power and government scope, selling people fear. And that was the only reason that they tolerated it. We're seeing it now with attempts to stoke up paranoia and fear about two things mainly. War on democracy, which is 50% Trump and 50% Irma January 6th. The fiery but mostly peaceful protests in which the only person shot and killed was the unarmed little white lady, but she had a MAGA hat on, so nobody cares and nobody protests over it. I don't see people burning Wendy's because of Ashley Babbitt being murdered. And then, on the other end, COVID. COVID is the other one. Now that one's beginning to wane because like Omicron, their attempt to stoke up fear with that really hasn't worked. Mainly because Omicron appears to be considerably less dangerous than former variants of COVID, which is very fortunate, by the way, for us. And you've got like Jared Polis. He's a Democratic governor in Colorado, and he's saying, fuck it, state of emergency's over. You've had plenty of time to get vaccinated, die if you want to. Now, the way he frames it, of course, is horseshit, but state of emergency ended. There's no longer any state-level mandates. I'd say that's a positive thing. Too bad it's not a state with seaports, of course, Colorado being landlocked. Then it would have more of an impact on the broader economy. But, trucks have to go through Denver once in a while. I think they'd rather go around all those mountains, but there's not too many passes, so sucks to be you. But the war on democracy tagline, the use of it repeatedly is a slogan, specifically by the legacy media. And you can tell that they're coordinating this. It's a propaganda campaign partially funded by China, I believe, partially funded certainly by the Democratic Party at large. They control large swaths of the legacy media, along with the rhinocons. They love Bush, which is why they're adapting this. I wouldn't be surprised if Jeb came to them with the plan. Probably one of the more intelligent Bushes, though, of which George W. would actually be one. He played dumb very well. He's a very good stage actor. He's a method actor, actually. He's better than practically any other method actor, I think, of the modern times. Just saying, I think that was a shtick, but it's effectively the same propaganda that we had before. The idea is that there's a threat, external or internal, and we're going to sell you a solution to that. Now, the solution is never realistic, and sometimes the threat doesn't even exist. For instance, with the war on terror, was Islamic terrorism a threat? Yes. Did our solutions that we were sold by the government work? No. We were sold multi-trillion-dollar endless wars. That failed. Afghanistan's under control of the Taliban at the moment, so we failed there. Iraq is still half destabilized, and right on its doorstep there's an ongoing civil war that we also peeked in on multiple times. We haven't accomplished anything. The only person who accomplished anything in that general sense was Trump, and that was basically because he withdrew U.S. forces from areas to let the Iranians and the Russians beat the shit out of ISIS. Effectively, getting out of the situation is how we won that conflict. Of course, still fully operative in Libya and still a problem. But we failed, by and large. And that's because the things that they sold us, they weren't really meant to keep anyone safer, because 9/11 was not part of a much more broad, actual imperialist jihad attempt. The closest thing that you've had to that was ISIS. When we got involved, that's when ISIS was able to seize land. It was prefaced on the destabilization in Iraq and Syria that U.S. policy caused. So, again, everything that we did effectively was the opposite of what we should have done. And of course, the denigration of liberty when you're going out on TV, as Bush famously did, and said, well, they hate our freedoms. Well, you're attempting to erode half of those freedoms to near nothingness. You're creating a massive spying apparatus that violates the Fourth Amendment. You're putting people on do not fly and, by the way, do not sell gun lists extrajudicially, violating multiple amendments. You're telling states to sit down and shut up and pony up the resources, so you don't care about the 10th. You clearly don't care about the right to trial. Multiple U.S. presidents effectively assassinated U.S. citizens without due process and without any particular judicial proof that they had broken any law. You're not supposed to drone a U.S. citizen because you say, well, the military's determined that they're firing rockets. Where's the due process? Where did you prove that they actually did that? Couldn't it have been someone that looked like them? Could it have been they were in the same area and you misconstrued them as the one that fired the rocket? Of course you could have. But now they're dead, so you don't have to worry about a jury trial. Surprised that Bush didn't move to trying to use military tribunals on U.S. citizens. I'm sure that that's happening anyway. We're doing the same thing now. The idea that there's a war on democracy is bullshit anyway. It's far less real than the threat of terrorism. Again, it was mostly unorganized one-offs, but it was there. There's no war on democracy. The idea that Trump tried to overthrow the government, tried to stage a coup, no, he didn't. The idea that the January 6th protest was a coup is utter horseshit as well. When you're talking about COVID, okay, there's an actual, well, there was a pandemic, now it's a seasonal disease, but the things that they're trying to sell you won't solve the problem. You were lied to for well over a year at this point, and you're still being lied to by the Democratic Party and by the left at large and the legacy media on a day-to-day basis about these and other issues. They're simply attempting to use them to gain more power. This is the infrastructure bill. Well, our infrastructure is failing. Well, Trump tried to tell you that and you said it wasn't so, but then you realized it was popular to say that you wanted to fix the problem and said, okay, I know how to fix it. Hey, give me more money. Well, Shovel-Ready 2.0, it's a kickback for your investors, for your donor class members. But it's pig in a poke politics. Always remember that. That's about all. Peace out.